Alright, well, our next episode is called Heart of Glory. It's episode number 20, and it originally aired on March 19th, 1988. It was written by Maurice Hurley, and the actual story was by Michael Michaelian, and directed by Rob Bowman. Alright, and plot-wise with this particular episode, Starfleet actually informs the Enterprise that there was a battle in the neutral zone. The Enterprise is ordered to investigate. And, of course, the first thought is, by the neutral zone, oh, are the Romulans up to something? They haven't heard from the Romulans in a very long time. So they head over to that area, but what they find is the remains of a ship and a severely damaged Tellurian freighter. So an away team of Riker, Data, and LaForge beam over, and LaForge is actually trying out a new experimental visual acuity transmitter. And basically what that means is he gives everybody on the Enterprise a chance to see what he sees. So it's kind of, how to describe it. Basically, they look on the view screen and they can basically see what Geordi is seeing through his visor. So this device hooks on LaForge's visor and transmits what the visor sees. And on board the freighter, the away team finds 3 Klingons, which is a surprise. They were thinking that they would run into Romulans there. They transport back to the Enterprise just in time, mind you, before the Tellurian freighter explodes. And after transporting back, the Klingons are taken to sickbay, and one of them actually has lethal wounds. And you see in this picture them all shouting up to the ceiling, and that is a special death howl that the Klingons do whenever one of their comrades dies, to warn the afterlife that a warrior is headed there. So that's the first time we actually see that in this particular episode. Anyway, Picard questions the other 2 Klingons, and they claim that they were passengers aboard the freighter when the Ferengi attacked them. Now, Picard doesn't feel very satisfied with these answers, and he thinks that there is more to the story than they've been let on. And sure enough, a short time later, a Klingon ship approaches, and the captain of the Klingon ship tells Picard that the men are fugitives. And he says they attacked and destroyed a Klingon cruiser, and demands that Picard transport them as soon as the 2 ships are in range. So Picard sends a security team to confine the Klingons to a holding cell, but the fugitives, of course, they escape pretty soon afterwards. And one of them dies in the attempt by security, but the other one goes to engineering and actually points a phaser at the dilithium chamber, which, of course, would destroy the Enterprise if he did that. So he pointed at the dilithium chamber and demands to speak to Worf. So Worf and Picard head down to engineering, and Worf gives a speech about the battles and the glory, and this would not be an honorable thing to do. And the motives really for this particular Klingon renegade is he feels like the Klingon Empire has gone soft, and he's trying to basically what's the word I'm looking for? He's looking to redo the Klingon Empire back to their original days of glory, basically. So that was his motive anyway. But Worf talks about battles and glory and says this isn't the best way to go, and he eventually kills him. So that allows the fugitives to die an honorable death, and in that manner the fugitives, in the way they died, they report that to the Klingon captain of the vessel, and the Klingon captain's pleased by the way they died. And he actually offers Worf a chance to serve with him after Worf's duty on the Enterprise is complete. And Worf thanks him for this offer. Of course, after the Klingon vessel leaves, he assures Picard that he has no intention of leaving the Enterprise, he was just being polite. So that's the end of that particular episode. And really, this is a very informational episode, but it's very important because this is the first time in Star Trek The Next Generation that we see the Klingon Empire, or talks about the Klingons, besides just seeing Lieutenant Worf there. It explains Lieutenant Worf's background for the first time, and that includes the story of a Romulan betrayal at Khitomer, which saw the death of his parents. his foster parents are mentioned in this episode, although we don't see them actually until the 4th season. But they are mentioned here, and they also mention his stepbrother, who doesn't appear actually till the very end of the series in the 7th season. Now, Michael Dorn was actually pleased with the outcome of this episode, and he felt it showed the producers that the fans were just as interested in his character as the others in the main cast. If you remember when I talked about Encounter at Farpoint, Gene Roddenberry was very resistant in even having a Klingon aboard the Enterprise. He wanted everybody to be done with all the aliens that were in the original series, and he wanted to move on just to new aliens. But they really, the other producers really fought for this particular character to be on the episode, and this is where he really first shines. And well deserved. I think Michael Dorn did a great job, and it just shows more of Worf's character. Now, Michael Dorn felt that it could have been taken further, and he wanted there to be a huge epic battle at the end of the episode. But he thought it was really well done. Now you see a Klingon battle cruiser here, and that was footage that was reused from Star Trek The Motion Picture, if that looks familiar to you. And the freighter was a general model, which was actually reused throughout Next Generation and other Star Trek TV shows as well. Now, the ending was something which was played with actually by director Rob Bowman. The scripted version actually showed the fight between Worf and Chorus, who was the lead Klingon renegade. That was actually taking place entirely on the first deck of the engineering section. But director Rob Bowman had them fight in the upper deck, and he used camera angles that hadn't actually been seen before on the show to film some vertical sequences in that part of the set, as well as altering the script so that Conmel needed to be hit by 3 phaser blasts, and Conmel was the person who was shot by security. Now, Rob Bowman used a Steadicam to film the scenes on the freighter in order to give it a rough effect to the footage, and he was really pleased by the outcome. He actually described it as the easiest of the episodes of Next Generation that he directed, which is saying something. And one of the guest stars in the episode was Robert Bauer as Kunivas, and he was the Klingon here who died, and they had that death howl for him. And he was actually in a band with Michael Dorn previously. Obviously it didn't really go anywhere, but they had some prior working experience there. Now, Heart of Glory was actually the only episode in the Next Generation for actor Vaughn Armstrong, but he actually went on to play 11 different roles in the Star Trek franchise, and most notably is the character of Admiral Maxwell Forrest, Admiral Forrest from Star Trek Enterprise, if any of you guys follow that series. So here he is as a Klingon here, but his claim to fame was really Admiral Forrest on Star Trek Enterprise. Now, as far as reactions to this episode, some critics felt that it was a little slow plot-wise, and that Michael Dorn's acting skills at this point were pretty mediocre. But they did agree that he got much, much better later in the series. And I certainly agree with that too. Michael Dorn, the more Michael Dorn was given to do, the more he had a chance to act, really. And he improved on the Worf character a lot more as the series went along. And some people criticized Vaughn Armstrong. They didn't really like his character of Chorus, and they felt like he did a lot better later as Admiral Forrest in Enterprise, and I would agree with that as well. But everybody really does agree that this episode really lays the groundwork for future Klingon episodes and for Worf's background and character, really. So this is a very important episode in that regard. Just thinking about how many Klingon episodes there are, not only in the Next Generation, but you see that in Deep Space Nine and even in Voyager and Enterprise. So this was a very important episode. Again, I can't emphasize enough how Gene wanted nothing to do with Klingons in this series, and it's a good thing that we ignored him here, because this really set the tone in the beginning of some great Klingon episodes in Star Trek here. and a great framework for Worf too. It's exciting to see Worf's progression throughout the series. He's turns out to be one of the more interesting characters, I believe, on The Next Generation, as you will see as I review future episodes. But this is where it all started, guys. This is where we had the first Klingon episode, and the first where we learned about Lieutenant Worf. So thanks for watching this particular review of this episode. Stay tuned for the next time.